Welcome, everybody, to the AI Cookbook Show. Malcolm here from Bregenz, Austria. Funnily enough, we are using AI to analyze our own podcasts, obviously. And one of the things that it was saying, yeah, you're losing yourself. And I was like, why? It's like, you're not always saying in every episode, greetings from Bregenz like you used to. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, fine. So let's move on. Let's talk about Anthropic. So I know the last episode was about Claude, and every second episode is about Claude and Claude Code. This one's very different. A couple of weeks ago, we made an episode about the Anthropic Report on productivity. It's really, really long, and the way that they did it is they analyzed hundreds and thousands of different conversations from Anthropic. Now, we talked about the productivity gain part in part one, and then we kind of said, okay, we'll probably do a part two because there's still a lot to say. And today we're going to talk about the great misunderstanding of AI. What's the misunderstanding? So when you look back historically, what happened is productivity improvements, they did not come from speeding up old tasks, but from fundamentally reorganizing production. Let's take a very simple example. We'll go into it a bit later. When, for example, Ford looked at the way that they produced cars, he did not say, well, before we had a steam machine, so let's put an electric machine and let's run things just a bit faster because, humans will then produce cars faster. No, he looked at the entire thing, the entire way that they were producing, and said, look at this. We need to totally reorganize the way that we build cars. And today we're going to talk about electricity, and we're going to talk about internet and PCs, and we're going to talk about the top 5 skills that you need in the company and that your employees need in the company to be able to really make AI work. So yeah, action, let's go.
Flip the switch, the circuit's live. Digital dreams, they thrive and strive. Recipes coded to feed your mind, serving knowledge of the AI kind. Welcome to the AI Cookbook Show, where the data streams and the insights flow. Tune in slow, let the rhythm grow. For every soul in the know and those who don't.
With AI, leaders are obsessed with the speed that AI can give us. Okay, we can do this process faster. We need now 6 hours. Maybe we can do it in 1. Okay, that's fine. Speed is one thing. But remember, the main event we were talking about, or what we try to teach business leaders, is reorganization. Your strategy, if it's only using AI for efficiency gains, is you're probably missing that $1 trillion point. So we said we're going to talk about electricity. So let's start with electricity. Now, imagine a factory in the late 1800s. Probably it was over 2 or 3 different levels, but it was still powered by a huge single giant steam machine. So this very large giant steam machine was connecting all the other machines with many different belts. So you can imagine, if there was a problem with the machine, then what happened? All the belts and all the machines were standing and everything was waiting. Now, when electricity came, funnily enough, the first thing that they did is, they just took a light bulb and they started putting light bulbs everywhere. They're like, well, great. Now we have light bulbs. Now we can see. We can probably work longer. We can come in the night. Okay, that's fine, but that's wild. I mean, there's electricity, right? Then a few years later, and when I'm saying a few years later, 30 years later, they started to rip out that steam machine. Because then they thought, okay, good. I mean, now we can have an electric machine even instead of a steam machine. And the result was really just a modest bump in productivity. Because now you have an electric machine, and maybe you have a distribution of electric machines. So these electric machines were now in different places instead of one single huge place. And in fact, it took nearly 30 years for manufacturers to understand I can totally change the way that I run operations. 30 years, think about it. It's an entire generation. So we understand from this, the constraint wasn't the technology, but its old mental models. Well, that's the way we always did it. They saw electricity only as a better steam machine and not a new system for distributing power. Now, finally, Mr. Ford, for example, came and he saw the way that we produce cars. And he said, okay, we won't be able to just make the cars produce faster. We have to totally change the way that we produce cars. That's when the breakthrough really came. When you were able to totally reorganize the way that you're producing. In this case, suddenly, the factory layout could be totally redesigned in multiple workflows. And as a result of this, reorganization unlocked explosive productivity. Not just we're going to produce cars double as fast. No, how about 100 times faster? So the innovation lied not in now we have electricity, but in understanding that we now have a tool which is enabling to reinvent the way that we work. This is electricity. Let's move 100 years longer. Let's look at when computers actually won. So in the early days, computers were, first of all, really, really expensive. So not everybody could buy a computer. In the early days, businesses that used computers were, for example, accounting, traders, people who were doing payroll, inventory tracking, because inventory tracking is lots and lots of papers everywhere, lots of distributed workload. Hey, put it all in a PC, and you can understand where your inventory is. Yet still, at the moment when PCs came out, I'm just going to repeat myself. You're going to be sick and tired of listening to this episode at the end. We just took a paper and pencil job and just did them faster on a screen. That's it. And again, it was useful. Yes, it was cool. But this was not the transformation. The transformation happened when companies like Walmart or any other company built entire new business models when they had computers. Why Walmart? Well, Walmart is a very powerful AI company. And not even AI, it's just massive to run Walmart. It's super difficult. They have huge supplier inventory. They have lots of logistic. They have an entire logistic hub. I mean, they ship more stuff, I think, than FedEx and DHL combined, something like that. From all this inventory, they need to understand real-time inventory. They have hundreds of retail stores. This is a huge new business model versus before just accelerating a bit, selling stuff. And when you get that ticket, when you when you're at the end and then you buy something and you say, could I please have the receipt? Walmart didn't just start printing the receipts faster or making that band. I don't even know what that band is called, where you put your groceries on. They didn't just turn that thing faster to be able to make more money. No, they had to totally re-architect the way that they work. Therefore, the key point, you see it again and again. The pattern is always the same. First, companies start accelerating old tasks a bit. Oh, this is cool. Like with AI. Oh, now we have AI. Before, we used to write emails in 1 hour. Now we write it in 10 minutes. Yippee. No, stop. When we work with companies, we're trying to really make them understand, forget using Copilot or ChatGPT just to improve processes. You can do that. But nobody cares about this. The jump will come from reorganizing work around these new capabilities that employees now have because of AI. So I made the comment in the German podcast, so you get it too. This, on the video podcast, is tea, not whiskey. I know it has the same color, but it's tea. Good. So the Anthropic Report explains a few things. It explains that we stupid humans are right now in phase one. We're just taking existing tasks. And by the way, not even all existing tasks. When you talk to business leaders, what are they doing? They're saying, yeah, I mean, we have 50 use cases in the company, AI use cases. I'm thinking, bro, you have 50,000 processes. Why do you have 50 use cases? First, we want to do a pilot. And then afterwards, in 6 months, if it works, we want to roll it out to other things. And I'm like, well, be like Accenture. But go and listen to yesterday's episode to understand this. Specifically, we are only using AI to do existing tasks faster. Yet the Anthropic Report says companies are doing this because it already works. Because with AI, you can have a productivity gain of 80% like this. You don't need to switch your brain on. And every time I love talking to AI, by the way, I love complaining about people. And I love also them complaining about me. So when I go and I work with companies, you always have these AI skeptics that are, yeah, it cannot count the number of R's in strawberry. So I'm like, okay, bro, send me your last 500 files. Let me write a report about your last 500 files. You also write the report. Mine will be finished in 3 minutes, but it's going to take another 10 because I will have 5 other LLMs look over it. You will be finished in a week. So it's not 80% productivity gain. It's 99% productivity gain. Yeah, but I still need to go and read the report. Yes, but now you can take 1 day to read the report instead of writing it for 7 days. This translation of efficiency gain is omnipresent on multiple different tasks of AI. Now let's come back to our friend Ford. Ford, he would never have been happy to produce 80% faster. He wanted to produce 100 times faster. Taking the electric motor and replacing the steam engine phase, that is where we are right now. The 80% time on your 4, 5, 6 trials that you've done with AI in your company, that's not the big bang that you're going to do. Because your competitors, they're doing exactly what Malcolm's talking about. They're looking at their processes and say, how can we greatly reorganize the way that we work to have that huge, big bang? The fundamental question that every leader needs to ask themselves is, how do we redesign our company around AI? What are we talking about? Look, I always bring it up, but it's the single easiest thing that you can do in your company. Just start recording each and every single meeting. Now, when we do a use case deep dive, because we'll work with companies, then we show them how to use AI, and then we work with different departments, and then we will do so-called use case sprints. And in these use case sprints that I always speak about, one of the top things that we say is, are you recording meetings? First of all, they don't. And if they do, what do you do it with? We get the action items. And I'm like, this is wild. What are you doing? Take them, channel them somewhere, funnel them. Every single day, the CEO of the company gets an email and understands what happens in the entire company. This is so easy to... Literally, Damian sits down for a week and it's done. It's so easy to do this. Yet when you talk to a CEO, I like to tell them, you have no clue what's happening in your company. Because it's decimated. Information is decimated until it gets to you. Somebody attends a meeting for 5 hours. They write you an email with 2 lines. It goes to their boss. Their boss has another 5 people reporting to them. Another 2 lines come to you. Isn't this wild? Isn't this wild that we have no understanding of processes of what's happening in our company? How should we redesign how should we redesign teams, hierarchies, workflow, and morph all of this in AI native capabilities? We cannot. Let's look at a teacher, just a normal teacher going to school. Now, my wife coaches teachers. That's why it's very easy for me to understand the use cases. And she says they used to spend a lot of time doing planning, the lessons planning, and then doing slides while Canva AI does the slides, and doing the planning of the class. Well, that ChatGPT does that in 2 minutes. So that went from 4 to 5 hours down to 10 minutes. Okay, now the teacher must have a lot of time. Why are all your kids not getting an A+ in school? Because, sorry, the teacher just won 4.5 hours. How the hell is that not possible, that that extra time goes into making your kids cleverer? So we understand again, it's not a technological question. It's an organizational design question. If the teacher had 4.5 hours, what would he or she be able to do to be able to boost the scores of your kids? And now let's look at these skills that these teachers or you or other people need to really move into phase 2 from the deployment of AI in companies. Okay, so Anthropic talks about bottlenecks. Bottlenecks are, you know what the word bottleneck is? Malcolm is not an English native speaker. So bottleneck is, this is your mental blockade that you're not able to release so that you can use AI better. Now, let's say I take a normal software development team. How do they work? Before ChatGPT, a good software developer was writing 300 lines of code per day. Now, Mr. Good Software Developer writes 10x, 3,000 lines of code in a couple of hours. This is wild. So now the output is much bigger. No, Malcolm, they're writing much more lines of code. Yes, but you know what the problem now is? It's not writing the lines of code. Now the problem is the coordination, the meetings, the code review, the supervision. Before, they used to write a lot of code, and then every 2-3 days they used to meet and do code review and say, how's your code? How does it fit? How does this feature fit? What is the next thing that we need to develop, etc. But software developers are spending much less time on actually coding, and now they're spending much, much more time in coordination meetings, supervision, etc. That's wild. Why aren't they using AI to also reduce that part of the business? And they're not. And they are not. But remember Mr. Ford, what did he do? He looked at the entire process. He didn't just say, we're just going to make motors, build motors faster. No. What we need to do is we need to change the entire thing. So getting 3 teams to agree on an API, or even worse, on a set of AI agents that are using multiple MCP servers, that are going to code half of them by themselves for features that we haven't even spoken about, that's not the technical problem. Now it becomes a human problem. It becomes a political problem. Malcolm is an AI-powered coder, and he or she says, well, you should do it that and that and that way. The old school IT guy who's never opened ChatGPT is talking another way, and I don't know, the product engineer is talking in a different way. But none of them is building live dashboards of meetings. Because if they would build a live dashboard of the meeting, from every single idea that somebody gives, there can be 3 or 4 pros and cons. There could be the company strategy inside and say, well, based on the last 20 meetings that you had, to be honest, it's better that you take the advice of Malcolm or the product engineer or the IT guy. Nobody's looking at that second big part. That's wild to me. So we move away from start thinking of how you could use AI to focus on navigation and coordination, because that's a big problem in every single company that's still not tackled. The second bottleneck that Anthropic speaks about in the report is judgment under uncertainty. So AI is kind of not really good at giving you an advice under uncertainty. Why? Because AI is very good at learning from previous ideas. Well, before it was like this, so this is my postulation that it could be this. But the problem is, as a business leader, you take a lot of decisions where you never ever know, is this the right or the wrong decision? Should we now launch this bold marketing campaign? Should we hire these 5 people even though we're not even making revenue in that department yet? So I'm not saying that AI will help you with this, but under uncertainty, AI is very, very good at building things for you so that you can overlay them and understand the problem. As an example, you talk about the situation with the 5 board members around you for 2 hours, and then you say, Claude, build me a SWOT analysis dashboard, or build me 3 potential scenarios that we have overseen based on what we said. So now, don't have a board meeting for 1.5 hours to discuss a problem. Have it for 45 minutes. Take a coffee break, come back, and look at the dashboards that AI generated to be able to augment yourself. Nobody does that. I promise you, I've never seen business leaders do this. It's wild. It takes 5 minutes, like just open your, Claude, paste the transcript inside, or ask Damian to set it up for you, and then analyze the outcome as a dashboard. We teach this in our academy. You don't need to be clever to do that. Like, I can do this. My IQ is very small, and my IQ is dropping because I'm using a lot of ChatGPT, and there's an MIT study that shows when you use a lot of ChatGPT, your IQ drops. Therefore, the ability to make a call, to get a better outcome, or to understand the potential of an outcome is greatly, greatly improved. Yet this is a bottleneck number 2 that business leaders are not using enough. Look, as AI provides more and more answers and better answers, the value is not in looking at all of these answers and trying to understand what should I now go into, but the value shifts into the right questions and augmenting your brain using AI. Okay. The next thing that the report also brings up is we will have to start having a relationship and trust. What, with AI? Oh, AI cannot even do 2 + 2 in most of the cases, and I should trust AI. Well, yes, you will have to eventually. Some people do already, but you will have to. Okay, let's talk a bit about this. So when we talk about trust, let's say you take a student who's 17 years old and about to go to university. I think in America you guys call it college. And he talks to his teacher that he's known over the last 2 or 3 years. What's going to happen? Well, the teacher will say, well, Malcolm, I know you. You're pretty good in maths and chemistry. You're pretty useless in English. I think you should study physics, whatever, who cares? Now, I want to give you a personal anecdote. I studied material science. It's applied physics. That's what I studied. You know why I studied that? Because my dad said you should study that. That's wild. But because he was here for Christmas, I found out why. Because his mother, think about it, my grandmother spoke to some teacher in some random village in Carinthia and said, yeah, he's coming to Austria to study. He's coming from Africa. What do you think he should study? And that guy said, oh, one of the most difficult studies in Austria, it's called material science in Leoben. Study that. That's wild. This is how Malcolm Verchota decided to study material science. Now, trust. Talk about trust. My daughter, hopefully, or Malcolm at the time, if I had AI today, you know what I would do? I would sit down, put up my feet, and talk to Claude for 2 hours or 5 hours. Ask me 100 questions about me. Claude would really understand me. Claude would probably know things about me that my teacher doesn't know about me in these 100 questions. And then Claude is connected to the internet. So Claude knows on the date, on the spot, all the things I can study around me and all the universities and how much it costs, etc. And what is my budget, etc. And Claude would probably be extremely tailored on the things that it proposes. instead of asking some guy, and then the grandmother asks another teacher, and then the teacher who's not been to university the last 10 years himself says, go and study that. That's wild. But the trust that humans are giving to other humans is ridiculous. It's frankly stupid. So I'm not saying stop trusting humans, but I'm saying, okay, maybe you talk to Claude for 5 hours, and then you take that and you go to the teacher and you say, I talked to a large language model and the large language model thought that. What do you think? Now let's come back to coordination and where AI is needed. Many technical or coordination tasks are actually relationship building in disguise. You ask this person because you trust this person. This person helped you, he gave you good advice a couple of months back, it saved your ass, and now you go back to that person. Now, that same ability to build trust with humans, we now need to start building with large language models, because that is really going to be an invisible lubricant, talking about factories before, to get anything done. The next two ones, let's try to combine them. It's a bit what Jan LeCun always speaks about. So Jan LeCun does not believe anymore in large language models as the big way to do a big jump in the adoption of AI. He believes in these so-called world models. We spoke about it a few times, but just for those who don't know, a world model is a model which is trained on more than just text, like whatever, video around us, weather, smell, who the hell knows, physical presence. So when you, for example, that teacher, remember the teacher, 4.5 hours, he saved it and now he does it in 10 minutes. And my question to you is, why the hell don't all the teachers have an A+ now? Because now he saved 4.5 hours. So the teacher comes in the classroom and is not wearing the new Meta Ray-Ban glasses. And for anybody with data safety or data privacy, please hold it, put your seatbelt on, shut up, listen to the point. Imagine the teacher comes into class with these Ray-Bans that film everything. I'm sitting in Austria. We had a wave of, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees who came because of the conflict. And now they're in the school, which is 5 minutes away from where I live. And maybe they don't speak German. And it's not easy for them. They come from a war zone. Think about that. And now they need to learn German. Imagine that teacher hears the way that the student answers, that school child. And then the Ray-Ban says right away to him, because it's connected to a large language model, says, based on the 5 mistakes that kid made, here is an exercise for the next 2 hours. I printed it for you. Just go and give it to her. Oh, wow. It's adapting the learning on the fly for that child. And the teacher has another 20 children around. And the teacher also knows, or the Ray-Ban or the AI knows the 20 last mistakes that kid made, or the development steps, or where it should be in the curriculum. So it does not matter if the teacher accelerated anything before. Nobody cares. But if it would start teaching like this, like on the fly with a large language model as a teacher, assistant, or coach, my God, then I really believe that your kids would get an A+. And moving from this to the next point, which is everything I'm talking about is very futuristic, but it's an element of novelty. And AI is not good at predicting elements of novelty. What do I mean? AI, or generative AI, is a word prediction model. In the past, this was in my training, so therefore let me give that as an answer. Because when we work with companies, especially pharma companies, and you have AI skeptics, and they may be right. One of the questions will be like, yeah, okay, AI is so amazing. Why do we still have cancer? Yeah, okay, you're right. If AI was so amazing, then it would be able to defeat cancer and predict what we need to give each and every single patient or develop new medication. Yet AI is not good at the so-called first-time work. This is the first time it's looking at that because it's not good at solving new problems. Therefore, innovation departments are not always very good when they're just using a bit more AI. Why aren't they innovating more? You see, the value isn't just about solving problems, but it's identifying when you're facing a problem that AI probably cannot fix. So, Malcolm, essentially you laid out a new job description for me. Yes, I laid out a new job description for you. And it's so funny, if you take a step back and actually put a pause now, go and drink a tea, this whiskey, which is tea, and think about these future of work skills. They're not new, like you don't need to be clever. Building relationship and trusts. My God, I think we did that around the campfire. Judgment under uncertainty. Yeah, I mean, we had to know, do I now go and chase that animal, or will I be so far away from my camp that then I'm going to die and sleep at night in the cold? No. First-time work, physical presence, all of these things, you don't need to switch your brain on. These are things that inherently we have in us, but we don't have them, or companies are not using them as anchors to roll out AI. Remember the first one I spoke about, coordination and navigation. That's your number one AI use case. Stop whatever the hell you're doing. Start recording all the bloody meetings. Get all the action items out. Connect it to your CRM. Do your employee engagement survey through this. See who's engaged by seeing what AI thinks about people attending each and every single meeting. And we continue so forth and so on. But don't keep the old structure like we just said before. To be able to innovate and move to that phase 2, using AI, the uncomfortable truth is you will not be able to just do your job faster. Nobody cares about it. Doing the job faster is like the minimum standard. You know, I used to work in oil and gas, and we always used to use, I don't know why we use that phrase, it's the minimum standard. Like, you did a really good job. You went to your manager and you said, you know what? I just did such a good job, A, B, C, D. I improved this process by, 30%. And he would turn around and say, yeah, from now on, that's the minimum standard. Okay, fine. So the long-term competitive advantage that companies will have and that you will have is by reinventing the wheel, reinventing processes with AI, and thereby overcoming these human bottlenecks. Because we spent 100 years valuing people who were good at processing information. Oh, Malcolm, you're able to write a report, 3 times faster than your colleagues. Good job. Okay, stop. But now AI can do that. So now, if AI can do all of these things that are very mundane and that people hate doing, like who likes to write an email, isn't this wonderful? Because now, probably for the first time in history, we're becoming more human. Why am I saying we're becoming more human? Because we have the possibility to free ourselves up from all the stuff that we hate doing. Isn't this lovely? And by freeing ourselves up, by not doing the things that we don't like doing, we have the time to put up our legs and put them on the table and chill and think and be pensive. And why do we need it? Because we know that AI is not good at that. AI will not reinvent our processes. But we can think, how would we reinvent our processes? Which innovation do we need to run in this company to totally reinvent this company? Because Malcolm said that Ford did not just want to do 80 things 80% faster. Ford wanted them to do 100x faster. How can we do 100x faster things in our company? How can we produce 100x faster? How can we do 100x more revenue? Do you understand this? This is lovely. This is so cool and so powerful. Now, for you as a business leader, 3 things. Stop thinking about phase 1. Let's improve the process by 80%. Nobody cares. That's 2025 talk or 2024 talk. Now plan for phase 2. In phase 2, the real transformation is how do we totally reorganize work to become more efficient? And the second one, all these core skills we talked about, which we know we're better than AI. Judgment, don't do it alone, do it powered by AI. Coordination, don't do it alone, don't get another 5 Scrum Masters, use AI. And also start building a relationship with AI where you start trusting AI and understand that probably novel things will not only come from AI, they will come from our human brain. And therefore, the third one is, this is going to force us to be more human again. Hey, maybe that should be the next KPI that you roll out in your company. So live from Bregenz, Malcolm out.